So, I mean, preserving the power of TV in the kind of fragmented media landscape we have now, obviously it's going to take work. TV used to enjoy a unique ability to build, reach that others couldn't match. Others can now match that. And TV, you have to work, of course, much harder now to build up your reach because audiences have become so fragmented. But this is common across many, many platforms, and we have the tools to do that. We just have to get cleverer. But of course, we now know that TV has another very, very powerful strength that in the past it hasn't traded on, which is its attentive power, and that it does have as a unique strength. So it is worth putting in the extra work to build reach in order to kind of create large brand effects, because the power we get from the attention paid to each impression is enormous. The attention curves are different on some of the newer platforms, but they all have one characteristic in common, which is very strong, long duration attention. So we can land complex associations, powerful emotional messages. We can tell great stories that will really work for brands because we've got the time, and it's so valuable. So, I mean, marketers make lots of mistakes when they're measuring video effectiveness, and probably the most common one is to imagine that all impressions are the same. So they tend to be driven very much by the CPM, cost per thousand impressions, on the assumption that an impression gained to an ad served on, say, a social platform is the same as on, say, YouTube or perhaps on a TV platform. But of course, the attention scientists' work teaches us that is profoundly untrue, that the value of an impression on a TV platform is massively greater than it is on a social platform, and the value of an impression on, say, YouTube is also a lot better than an impression on social. So it is a huge mistake to regard all impressions as the same, but also the other danger that we have is that we don't look for the richness of communication that you can get from longer impressions. So we don't measure the kind of depth of impression, the emotional engagement, and specifically, at the moment, not enough people are measuring the actual eyes-on attention.
Yeah.
When they look at the data they get, say, from Meta, it's about, how long the ad was viewable. There's a huge difference between an ad being viewable and an ad being viewed.
Yeah.
And it's only when we engage with the attention scientist data that we realize this. So there are so many areas of measurement mistake at the moment. It would be difficult to answer your question in a short time. So, I mean, there are many reasons why TV and premium video maintain greater attention levels than digital platforms, but probably, to me, the three most important of these are, first of all, that people are prepared to view advertising on those kind of platforms more because they know it funds the content. There's a different contract there. Secondly, the scrolling algorithms that drive particularly social tend to draw your attention away from the ads. Inevitably, they want you to scroll down. So it's a very distracting, very cluttered environment in which advertising struggles to get noticed. And third, there is the contextual issue, which is that the way they get you scrolling, often on social platforms, is to kind of create tension and anger in some cases, and generally to give you, I would argue, often quite negative reasons to want to scroll on. And that is not a great context, particularly for powerful emotional advertising. And there are other reasons as well, but those, to me, are the three most important reasons. The creative principles that really drive effective brand advertising we know about, and they're not changing. And they are about delivering an emotional connection between your brand and the consumer. It's about storytelling, it's about emotional connections between your brand and their needs. And that isn't going to change. It's not changing. It will continue to change. It doesn't matter which platform we're delivering on. We have to find a way of telling a story that involves your product, but also engages emotion. I recommend this to anyone who's thinking of trying to develop powerful video ads, is to think about, first of all, what your product does for consumers, but don't think about it in a literal, rational sense. Think about how you can elevate that, to ladder it up to an emotional sense. How can we tell an emotional story about what this product does for its users? And then when you found that, and that's a creative task, you need good creative minds to do that. When you found that, run with it and do it as powerfully as you can. I think what we might group as TV, and it's becoming a slightly vague expression these days, but what we might call as TV, whether it's linear or broadcaster video on demand or subscriber video on demand, all of these are, I think, most powerful as brand building environments because of the attention issue that we've been talking about. Where you have low attention platforms, particularly social, a much better way of using those is for bottom of funnel performance marketing. There are some platforms that occupy a middle ground. So YouTube, we could go either way with that. With connected TV, similarly, we could do both because it has the capacity to tap into the kind of data that drives bottom of funnel sales, but also connected TV can be used to build brands. So if I was a media owner, I would be most excited by owning that middle ground, whether it's with something like YouTube or whether it's with connected TV. I would want to be able to fish in both pools, the brand building 60% budget or the performance marketing 40% budget. Because if I can fish in both pools, I'm going to make money. The power of the new subscription channels coming along, and of course new digital versions of traditional linear TV like broadcaster video on demand, I mean, the evidence is quite clear that although they deliver a slightly different pattern of attention, they still deliver very good long-form attention. So I think we should regard them as equally powered. There are some strengths to one approach and some strengths to another, but I think they are not as important as the overall conclusion, which is they all kick ass in terms of attention. So the introduction of vertical video formats for some of the subscription channels, it's an interesting and complex question because undoubtedly it's going to change the consumer experience of the content that we are advertising in the middle of. And I would want to be convinced that content would retain its emotional contextual power when I'm only looking at a narrow kind of bar in the middle. Adapting existing content to work in a vertical format, I think that's going to be really difficult. So what we're probably talking about is shooting the content specially for a vertical format. And there are reasons we should be concerned. I'm not suggesting it definitely won't work, but I would be concerned because the one thing you lose is kind of the sense of spectrum, of width, of space, of multiple people in a scene. Scenes become narrow and very focused, and that is not really a helpful environment, I think, in which to build kind of emotional engagement. And if that is the case, and the same is applied to the advertising that has to sit on those platforms, I think it's going to be more difficult to create these same emotional kind of resonances. Difficult but not impossible. If there are strong commercial and audience reasons for doing it, and I can understand how there might be, then we will have to find a way of adapting to it. But I wouldn't do it for any other reason than we've got to do it. A lot of people write TV off when it comes to young audiences, but actually they don't, I think, look at the data. They make huge assumptions. And we know that young people do still watch what we might regard as TV. They watch it on different platforms often. They will watch it online, they will watch it streamed, they will watch it through YouTube. They have various ways of watching it. Any other way than probably watching it with their families, but that's another matter. So we know they're watching it. They probably watch it less than we know they watch it less than ancient people like me, but they nevertheless watch it. But it's always been true that young people have watched less than that. That's not a new finding, but we know they're watching it. So I think we just have to find the content that they are watching and find the platforms on which they watch it and make sure that we are serving those ads. But the big mistake is just to say, Well, they spend all their time on TikTok or Meta. Well, it's true they do spend a lot of time on those platforms. Unfortunately, they're not looking at ads on those platforms. And the analogy I draw is I spend a lot of time in my car looking at my screen of my car. And no one's going to suggest to me that that is a good platform for advertising because my attention is elsewhere. Of course, it would be dangerous if I was looking at it. So you've got to find a platform where they're going to watch your ads. I think the marketing industry has become obsessed with targeting because they've become so obsessed with the bottom of funnel piece. And for that, you have to be able to target tightly to people who are in the market. And that has led people, I think, to ignore the other important facets of media choice, which are things like context and reach and so forth. So I certainly feel that we are over-focused on targeting abilities. That's not to say they're not important. In a fragmented media landscape, we need to have quite a clear idea on who's watching. We need that targeting data. That's why I welcome, the new kind of data streams that streamed video will enable us to have, streamed channels, and particularly connected TV, because building audience reach is going to require us to use targeting data. But, let's not forget the other strengths of these, the attention strengths and the contextual strengths. They are at least as important as targeting strengths. I've talked a lot about the power of emotion in advertising effectiveness, and we know it's hugely important. And it's important for lots of reasons. First of all, we know emotional messages are more convincing. I mean, there are good reasons rooted in brain function and psychology that an emotional message is a better way to convince you to change your behaviour than me lecturing you. So it works more powerfully as a persuasion tool. But we also know from lots of different strands of science that it's also much more memorable. It creates more enduring memories. So it doesn't just work more powerfully now, it works more powerfully next week, and next month, and next year. So there's a double whammy of benefits to emotional messages, which is why in all the data you look at, certainly in the data that I look at, we relentlessly see that emotional ads outperform more rational ones. It's the basis of the cost of dull project, which I also talked about today, which is rooted in the idea that dull advertising that is not emotional, actually requires a lot more money put in behind it to make it work than exciting emotional advertising. I've been involved with a lot of colleagues on developing the Cost of Dull project. And the Cost of Dull project is, again, an attempt to get people to face up to the challenge that there is far too much dull advertising around, and that simply putting more and more money behind ever more dull advertising is not a sensible answer. It's certainly not an answer as far as CFOs are concerned. If we want more budget for our campaigns, we need first to show that they work very hard. It's hard-working money. Then I think you can go to a CFO and say, do you know what? It would achieve a whole lot more if I had more money. So the cost of dull is about understanding what the penalty is of taking what you might regard as the easy way out. It's easy to develop dull advertising. I mean, there's enough of it about. It's very easy to do. It just doesn't work very hard. So you have a trade-off between investing in powerful, non-dull, emotional content and the amount of money you'll have to put behind it. It's a simple trade-off. And if we can get that message over to the CFOs and CEOs of marketing organisations, then I think we will turn the tide and get money back behind powerful advertising. If I've learned one thing in life, it is that money follows success. And if you want more money for your marketing budget, you really need to be able to prove that you've got something that's really worth putting money behind. If you've got a lame product, I mean, I joked in this presentation today, that you can go to a CFO and say, because my ads don't work very hard, I need an extra 10 million euros. But you'd have to be quite a brave CMO to do that. Most CFOs would show you the door. Much better to say, I've got a really powerful piece of advertising that, despite the fact that I have a limited budget, is really working in the marketplace and we're seeing growth, and go to a CFO and say, if you gave me more money, I could really transform the power of our business. That to me is a much more positive message to take.